Hi Jai,
Hello,
welcome
hello.
on board. Firstly, a quick introduction to everyone. We've got Mr. Jai Gudhka today with us. He's Senior Director Business at Snabbit. And just talking or introduction about Jai that I could put across is the fact that uh, almost 10 years of working with
Yeah,
industry
yeah,
that I can say, and working from brands like LogServe to Reliance to Meesho to House of X and now Snabbit. That's the kind of journey with startups that Jay has been able to pull, and I think it's some amazing growth stories that he's out here building for various brands that he's built with. So even be it Meesho, be it House of X, be it whatever, I think there is tons of growth learnings that he'll be able to share with us and something that we all can learn today. So Jay, just one question before we start off is, so what were you able to buy after Meesho went live?
to be honest, the employees of Meesho, right, who had the ESOPs, we still haven't been able to exercise, right? It takes some time for that to
Correct.
happen. But honestly, my plan is to just invest it back in the markets, right? Like not
Great.
not spend our money from that.
So
And
anyone who's looking for a funding, see, there's one investor right here with us, right? But anyways, just jokes apart. Putting one more question to you, Jai, is this was a formal introduction I could give. If you had to introduce yourself, how would you want your introduction to be?
if uh, if I had to introduce myself, right, I would. I mean, the way that I think of myself. Um, I'm just in my eyes, I'm just a kid with big dreams, right? Who has been very curious and has been willing to take enough risks to keep growing in life, right? And thanks to the blessings of everyone, of course. But someone who has right intentions, has right motivations and right ambitions, and is willing to put in the hard work to achieve whatever it takes, right? Is willing to burn that midnight oil. That's how I look at myself, right? And I hope I continue to look at myself even 10 years down the line, 10 years down the line, the same way. But yeah.
Lovely. We wish for the same for you as well, Jay. Okay, so now just moving a few quick questions that I want to put across is, are you a tea person or a coffee person?
I'm both.
You're both. Interesting. And what would be your comfort food on a hectic day?
On a hectic day, probably a Mexican salad.
Amazing. And a morning or a night person? You said midnight oil, so now I think
It's yeah, a night
it's
person.
nights.
Yeah.
Correct. And one confession, if we had to ask you about the app that you open the most on the phone, but are guilty to admit that you do that.
It would be like the only app I'm guilty of opening a lot is Instagram, right?
See, that's
Nothing,
that's
not
all our
nothing.
all. It's
Yeah,
just
yeah,
we're all in the
yeah.
same boat.
We're all in the same boat.
Correct. Anyway, so now that we have humanized the conversation with Jay, let's get into, probably just going in back, if you can tell us about your education, how it shaped you or how it got you into the startup mode.
So I'm born and brought up in Mumbai, right? I did my schooling from NES International. Post that, I was preparing for IIT JEE, right? As I'm sure many of people here also would have tried, right? Most of us have tried and most of us have failed at that. I failed at IIT JEE and then I decided to move to commerce, right? That's when I entered BMS, started doing BMS, did that for 3 years. But when you want to do something in life, right? JEE is one of those things, right? I was like very clear I'll do a great MBA post my undergrad. And post I finished my BMS from SIS, right? I was very clear that I'll do whatever it takes to do a good MBA, right? And that's what I started preparing for. Everything that happened between that and my MBA was just me doing things that I enjoyed. But eventually, the goal was always to get into an MBA, right? And so I went to LogicServe. I did product management over there for about 1.5, 2 years. Then went to Reliance. Again, did product management over there for about 2.5 years. Then got into ISB, did my MBA from there. And then, of course, post ISB, I was able to get into Meesho through placements. And Meesho has sort of been a game changer for me, wherein I learned a lot by being around some of the smartest people, that I worked with. and post that again decided to take some risks. Right, went from Misho, which had already become like a $5 billion value org, to joining a really young startup called House of X, right, which was just up and coming, because I thought social commerce is gonna be a very big thing, and it is a big thing, right? Worked there for a year. Decided I wanted something even more exciting, something that grows even more, right? That's when I lucked on Snabbit, right? Again, decided to take a risk again, and hopefully this time around the risk has somewhat been fruitful, right? So that's been like my education and my
Correct.
work journey.
So some more just questions about this same journey as well. So would you say you were a book smart person or a street smart learner?
I would say at different phases in my life, I was a bit a bit of one thing at some point in my life and a bit of other thing at other points in my life, right? When I look at myself now, I am more of a street smart person, right? When I was comparatively younger, I was a more of a book smart person, right? So it's been sort of that evolution that's kicked in.
Lovely. And because this question comes commonly to all is how did formal education help you? But if you could answer it in a perspective where we all know that probably graduation or post graduation gives you a boost, but I would want to reframe this question for you saying because you went to ISB, does the quality of the university where you do your post graduation matter, or is it about learning things before you get into post graduation?
Um, See, the thing is to get into a college like that, right? You need to have some amount of foundation, right? Some amount of learnings that you've already accumulated and some amount of things that you've already done. Once you reach there, it's like climbing a ladder.
Right.
You climb that ladder in that duration. It's not like you learn something very different in ISB compared to, let's say, any other B school or any other college in general. It is pretty much the same things, just that you're learning it with people who are also like you, right? Who are also very ambitious, very hardworking, and of course smart, right? And that is what makes the difference, right? That is what ultimately makes the difference. It is not the curriculum. It is not what you learn there. It is
The
just the
people around
people
you.
you are around with. Um,
Amazing. So true. And in this journey of yours of learning, when did you realize that you think different than how most people think? I think that's the reason you have shaped your career in a way also. So you must have realized, oh, I'm slightly different than others.
um, the slight differentiation sort of, Akshay, only comes from the fact that I sort of have been more curious, right? And I've sort of always adjusted my goals as per where I reach, right? So the moment I reach here, I'm like, okay, now let's go for this, right? And I'm very curious to reach there. I'm very enthused about that, right? So you keep repositioning your baseline every time you reach any place, and you be very curious about it, right? And above all, I think for a lot of people, maybe they don't enjoy what they do, right? But everything that I've picked in my career have been things that have been picked by me, have not been things that have been given to me, right? And therefore I have always enjoyed doing things that I do. Having said that, obviously there is still a long way to go, and a really long way, right? But what really matters is that I enjoy what I do, and because I enjoy, I can do a lot more than others.
And that gives you the
That's
freedom to.
Yeah,
So curiosity
that
is
is
your
the
key.
differentiator in a way, right? Otherwise, there are
Tons.
hundreds of people in general,
Correct.
right, everywhere. So, uh,
Exactly. Amazing. So now coming a little more towards, the career path of startups, because that's the talk that everyone wants to understand. What are startups? How do they go? So for you to enter startups, were you mentally prepared from the beginning that that's the kind of way you want to get into, or it did just happen to you?
it didn't just happen to me. As I said, right, I've always picked things, right? See, the thing is, if you really want disproportionate outcomes in your career, right, you have to take disproportionate risks, right? And startups in India, the stage where India is at, become a place where taking disproportionate risks can actually lead to disproportionate outcomes, right? So, if I always thought that this is my time to work really hard, right? Like till 40, work really hard. Obviously, work till you die. That's what I believe in. But obviously, your body has to also sustain the intensity of work, right? So, at least till a certain age, I wanted to do everything that I can,
Got it.
right? And wanted that to lead to great outcomes. And the only place that I could think of that could make that a reality were startups, right?
Perfect.
So,
So
and
somewhere in your mind you had chosen that this is the kind of path
yeah,
you would want
absolutely,
to get into, right? So it's
absolutely.
that clarity that is needed before we go on to that zone also. Lovely. And once you got into startups, what was the first real shock you had that, versus the visual or the Instagram startups versus real startups? What was the real shock that hit you?
What really ends up hitting, right? I am honestly, I don't know about Instagram startups, but what ends up happening is that one thing is to hear about journeys of people who've really gone through a lot, right? Who work day in and out. All of us work day in and out, right? But when you work in a startup, right, the intensity is just really high, right? For me, it's almost like I do 1 week's work in almost 1 day, right? Like every day, right? And that is what hits you because you need to move really fast, right? You cannot move slow. That's the only advantage a startup has over any other big player is the speed, right? And so that speed hits you, and because you get so caught up in that day in and out, right? Um, Everything around outside of that workplace fades out. Like the only thing that you think of and the only thing that you live is that work, right? And to the extent that even like your personal life, your friends, your family become second in order. They are not the first in order, and that is what hits you when you actually go down this route, this journey. And obviously, that is not like for long. It is short lived, but it is there, and that is what comes as a surprise. And balancing that becomes like one of the most important things.
Absolutely, very true. So again, on similar line, because you said that these are the habits, families, etc. So when things start scaling in a startup, what is the first personal habit that you have to let go of?
For me personally, it was procrastination, right?
Oh,
Like I could no longer procrastinate, right? I had no bandwidth. I had, for the lack of better word, right?
correct.
I had no bandwidth to procrastinate for anything because everything demands so much attention and so much effort, and it's so urgent that you cannot push things to the next day, all right? Because if you do, you essentially lost a competitive advantage, right? Or you lost something if not advantage of competitive advantage, right? So that was the first thing that I sort of had to let go of and become more planned in nature. Right? Like yeah, the days need to be more planned, they need to be more deliberate. You can't let things happen to you, you have to happen to things, right? That is what sort of has been changing. It's not like I'm still there, but that's the journey.
Taking charge of your day.
Yeah.
Correct. Brilliant. All right. So now, okay, now moving on from, the generic conversation about startups to something as a message, because, in the previous conversation, you also said you've been mentored in life and you want to mentor others in the future also. So today, youth take startups as a ping pong table. They think it's something that's going there. So what would be your message where, how could you make it real for them? What a startup is?
India is going through a phase where everyone is very ambitious. Everyone wants to start their own thing, control their future, have a great bright future, right? Um, and to answer what a startup is essentially solving something that's broken, right? Um, if you can find the problems, and India is um, either by, I mean, luckily or unluckily, right, has a lot of problems to solve, right? So a startup is all about picking one thing that you think will have enough takers solving that problem, and then obviously selling the solution, right? That is what a startup essentially is in a nutshell, right? Not just startup, any business is that in a nutshell, right? The only thing is that you don't have a lot of resources when you start up, right? So you have to be very prudent about what you do, experiment fast, fail fast, work with a lot of frugality, right? And then eventually, once you reach a certain stage of the startup, which is the magical word we call as PMF, product market fit, right? That's when you know that you have um, of something of value, right? And yeah, once you have that, then obviously it is about scaling that. Scaling that can come from multiple things, right? One, you may require funds, you may require more manpower, you may require XYZ resources. It is just about getting those right resources on time, um, in the right amount. Over or under of it can also lead to failure of a company. Getting everything in the right amount, and then obviously keep scaling, right? That is what technically a startup is. Now obviously, like, there are 100 problems, so each problem will require a different mode of thinking. But yeah.
Lovely. So now coming from that to your current, venture, Snabbit. I believe you joined Snabbit at a stage when they were very young, right? Or if you could just elaborate, at what stage did you meet Ayush and join the team?
Um, I joined Snabbit in December of 2024, right, when Snabbit was still a comparatively young company. It was very nascent in stage. Of course, it had been 11 months since the company was existing, but in terms of scale, it was a small company, right? That's when I sort of met Ayush, understood his vision, right? Because whenever you're joining a very, very young startup, right, what matters the most is the vision of the founder and the founder, right? And honestly, that is all that matters. You buy in the vision and you buy in the founder. And once you do that, and Ayush obviously is a phenomenal founder, as we all can see now, right? From the first meeting I had with him, I was like, I had completely bought in to the idea, right? Because this is a problem that each of us face. I personally have faced it a lot. I went and discussed it with my family, and my dad was like, this is a big problem. And I think a startup like this will do really well. And so, yeah, buying into the vision and buying into the founder.
Lovely. And just to ask you, when Ayush explained the problem statement to you, was it because he had his partner complain about house help not being there, or is he obsessed with cleanliness that he wanted this?
No, so the thing is, Ayush himself had faced this problem a lot, right? So he used to stay in Powai, and when he was trying to find a house help, he had a really hard time dealing with that, right? And that's when he realized that, like, the whole home services market in India is broken, right? It is largely unorganized, and as a generation who are becoming used to a lot of conveniences, home services are largely inconvenient for us, right? Right now, we can order groceries in 10 minutes. I mean, back then, we could order groceries in 10 minutes, restaurant food in 30 minutes, right? And anything that you want through Amazon, Flipkart, right? Like, would come in a day or two, at least in a metro city. Home services was something that was like there was nothing, right? Like, you had to go speak to your neighbor, speak to your watchman, right? Or go to multiple websites from which you would never get a response.
Correct.
So that's when it dawned upon Ayush that this is such a big market, and the reason it's not been solved till now is because it's a different problem to
Correct.
have been solved, right? So, yeah, I think that's how Ayush sort of thought about it.
Got it. No, so fun and facts apart, but then the thing being, now what I want to know is from your perspective, when you joined the team at Snabbit, or if you're joining any startup in that per se, what are the attributes or what are the kind of things that a person should look at? Like when you talk about TAM from an investor's perspective, when you talk about different terminologies, what would you recommend that you look for that problem from a data perspective?
While you ask me this answer from a data perspective, I would want to answer it like holistically, right?
Please.
One is obviously the way that an investor would look at a startup is kitna TAM hai, kitna SAM hai, kitna SOM hai, right? Like these are the terminologies that they will use. Um, they will do some rough math and come up with a number. Ki, okay, this much is the market and all of that, right? Obviously, startup is a bit of that. Um, but when you're evaluating a startup, right, it is a lot about the vision and the problem that is being solved, right? And obviously there has to be a certain baseline of market that one will aim to reach, or one that is available to capture, but a lot of it is just about vision and how strong the belief is in that vision, right? And how is the founder like, right? You're just, as I said earlier, you're just buying into that. You're not buying into numbers, because if the founder is strong and the vision is strong, right, everything else will get figured out over time. Nobody has like a very clear path to, growing in a startup, like the startup growing in a certain way, right? Nobody has that. It is just something that you figure out on the go, and for that to figure out on the go, you just need to have very strong conviction. So you buy into the conviction. You TAM, SAM, SOM, I think are all important things, but they are all secondary.
So it's the founder, the vision,
Yeah,
the people that we
absolutely.
get involved with, right? And when you were with these guys, or when you started off, I think you started off as a chief of staff again with Snabbit as well. So this role probably is a very generalistic role of doing everything. When you talk about that, what were your core challenges, or probably challenges if you can talk about Snabbit, in setting up ground ops? Because this is a very ground heavy business and it requires people management. So if you can elaborate a little on that.
So when I joined Snabbit, right, like one of the problems that I was given to solve was growth, right? Um, right off the first day itself, I was very clear I have to look at growth, right? And so growth is not something that I had done in the past, right? So I just had to sort of exercise my first principles thinking, understand how this industry works, how do we get growth, what are the channels of growth, right? And then go down the funnel of each of those channels, right? And then obviously while doing that, you keep figuring out. That's also when I sort of met the team here, right? And then learned along the way. And while doing that, the common challenges that you face are that there is a lot of uncertainty, right? Like sometimes you will do things that are right by the book, but will not work, right? You will hire people who may not have the best intent. You will hire people with the best intent, and yet the work isn't happening, right? So there can be multiple challenges that can happen. So it is always about solving on the go, right? It is always about solving whatever comes at your doorstep, and you do that long enough, and then you figure out the playbook for what works and what doesn't work, right? And then once you figure out a playbook, then it's all about scaling that playbook, right? Once you know, hey, this works, तो फिर इसको scale करते हैं, right? And then parallelly figure out what else also works. But yeah, it was the journey about it was a journey on that only.
Perfect. And so basically what you've answered is how chaos versus clarity emerges
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
beginning operations or getting there. But if I had to tell you, there is definitely a difference in the way that a startup team or thinks and how a legacy business team thinks. How would you define that? What is the difference in that thinking pattern?
See, in a legacy business, right, you already have something that's been set, right? Often the mindset is to not lose, right? The mindset is not always कि I want to win. It is about I don't want to lose, right? Legacy businesses also comparatively move a bit slowly, as is the nature of any big business. It's not like any particular one. In general, that is how big businesses operate. Um, Plus, also, as a company grows, right? Um, think of it this way: if it's a circle with a lot of dots and you expand the circle, the dots move far apart, right? So people become more and more away from the ethos, the vision, the ownership attitude in a larger org, right? But in a small org, it's all very tight knit. And when it's very tight knit, everyone has bought into the vision, everyone has bought into the conviction. And when everyone has bought into the conviction, that is what truly makes the difference. Everyone is an owner and everyone is working with a goal of achieving, right, with a goal of winning, right? And ultimately this is what separates a large company from a small company, right? Like high ownership, extreme speed, and fail fast learn fast attitude, because everything is at stake. A large company, if they make one mistake, nothing is going to happen. A small company, if they make one mistake, boom, done, right? So with high stakes, people, I think, just step up a lot.
Correct. And so completely aligned with how you said this. So in this case, now when you have to talk about, say, because you're in a leadership role, you have to manage people, or for even like an organization like Snabbit today, it's going to be a people heavy nature of business. How do you solve for the resource problems? Or there is always a problem of resources in a startup. How do you take them up? How do you solve for them?
See, I think resource problem, right, is sometimes real and sometimes it's a mindset problem, right? Sometimes you actually have a lot of resources, but maybe you just want more comfort, right? And hence you need more resources. I think the best work that anyone will ever do is when they are constrained, right? And so the way to deal with the resource problem is to be very intellectually honest and ask yourself, if I don't have X resource, and let's say it's not going to be there, I don't have an option to have the X resource, can I still do Y? Right? If the answer to that is yes, then you go all out and do it. If the answer to that is no, it cannot happen. Sometimes fundamentally you cannot do something if you don't have resources, then obviously you need to get the resources, right? But more often than not, what I've seen in my life is that the problem is not the resources. It is usually the mindset. Um, and so it is a problem that only truly one can be very intellectually honest with them and get an answer on.
Awesome. So, and with a company that's growing today, at particularly at any stage, which is an early growth stage, which is first funded, or a series, first round of series that is going on, how do you say that, like, how much of decision making is logic versus how much is, I would say, how do you put it, just that it's your intuition?
See, in the starting days, right, um, a lot of decision making is logic, right? Because you will not have intuition for something that you don't have enough experience in, right? And even if you have intuition, then most likely that intuition will be misplaced, right? Intuition comes from experience and having spent time on a particular problem for long enough, where then it is very instinctive, right? So in the initial days, everything that you do has to be very deliberate, thoughtful, logical, and first principles oriented. And obviously all of this also has to be very fast, and you need to pick your battles, right? Like there are, as Jeff Bezos usually says, right, there are two kind of decision making. One is a one-way door decision making and one is a two-way door decision making, right? Two-way door decisions are reversible. You can take a decision and reverse it, right? You don't spend a lot of time on those decisions. You need to maybe use your instinct or use your prior judgment to exercise those judgments, and if they fail, you switch back. And then there are really important one-way door decisions, right, which you need to spend time on, and you need to be good at identifying which are one-way door and which are two-way door decisions, and that's how you go about decision making overall.
Lovely. Awesome. And so now when we talk about this growth, how do you say, growth speeds. For example, Zepto is one brand that has grown super fast in the last couple of years. Snabbit is also following the path of growing at that scale today. So when organizations grow at that speed, what's the first thing that breaks in an organization?
When an organization is growing really fast, right? Um, the first thing I would say that breaks or sort of starts moving away or is left behind, right, is are people who don't move fast enough, right? If I have a group of 5 people and we all decide to achieve a goal or run a marathon, right? Anyone who does not run fast enough or who's not able to catch up will eventually not win the race, right? So usually in an organization that's moving very fast, this is the problem, right? I think honestly, when you move really fast, it builds a very good momentum. It builds a very winner mindset, right? Because you are on a spree of winning. The moment you win, you get a dopamine hit, right? And you want to go for the next big thing, and the next big thing, and the next big thing, right? Momentum alone is the single most biggest force that you will ever experience in your life, right? And so the only thing that can break this, right, if not a lot of people are able to match that momentum, or not a lot of people are able to match that mindset. So it is very important to ensure that everyone who are there with you in your journey, right, all share a similar mindset and a similar momentum. But yeah.
Amazing. So just a few quick, probably one word answers on this is, would you say perfection or speed that needs to be here?
I would always choose speed over perfection.
Speed over perfection. And calm over chaos.
See, I think depends. But I've realized a lot of decisions that one would have taken with a lot of chaos in their mind could also have been taken by being calm. So I would always choose calmness over chaos.
Lovely. And working with a team your age or your generation, or working with a young team?
The right mix of both, right? A lot of younger generation folks bring in a lot of energy and a different perspective. It is very important to be in touch with that perspective, right? But obviously, a lot of understanding and judgment comes from experience, and experience comes with experience, which comes with age, right? So hence both.
So a
Not
mix that you would
Yeah,
balance should
yeah.
put there. Amazing. So now just moving the conversation more from the soft side to the numbers side or so on. So when founders or core teams today think of starting something, what should be the point where a startup founder or a core team should go out and look for investment? Or what maybe, or the other way to put this question is, when should you not go out for investment until you achieve certain point of clarity?
Um, the answer is different for different stages of a startup's life cycle, right? When you're just starting out, you you may need some initial funding amount just to establish a PMF, right? That can either come from your friends and family, your own savings, or through a well-wisher who may be willing to invest, right? Um, Once you have that, you work very frugally and establish a PMF. The moment you have a PMF, that is when you go out and search for funds, right? Because otherwise, anyway, nobody's going to invest, right? This is largely true for most of the startups, apart from the ones where the founder already comes with certain pedigree of having worked somewhere XYZ, right? And they are entering a space that is already very hot, right? For example, if someone who's worked in Meta AI today decides to start his own AI startup, he will not have to establish a PMF, he will still get funding, right? But if you're building a new category, a new product, you will have to establish a PMF. That is when you can raise the money, right? And then obviously once you've raised that money, then you have to keep scaling, keep growing, right? And keep growing sustainably, right? And the moment again, right? Again, this question is a bit more complex because when you raise money depends on what scale you are at, what is the competitive pressure, how much money you have in the bank, right? And what are your future ambitions, right? All these four things combined is what sort of leads to the decision of raising money, right? And so the answer may depend upon each variable moving up or down. Um, but yeah, largely I think anyone who wants to get started should look to establish something that has a strong PMF, right? Now, maybe a question that comes is what is this PMF, right? PMF is when PMF is product market fit. It usually you can define a product market fit, right? When any product that you're selling or any service or anything that you're selling, right, has a strong repeatable user base, right? Who tried your product, who liked it, and are willing to keep coming back to it at a certain interval, right? Only when this happens that a business can become a business, right? Otherwise, you're just, otherwise you're just spending money to acquire a user and then they never come back. And usually people spend more money to acquire users on the first go than what they make from them, right? And so it only makes sense is when they keep coming back and you know, okay, I have acquired this user base who will keep coming back, and maybe 1 year down the line, I will start making money from them. When you realize this, and this shows up early in like 2-3 months of a business getting established, that is when you know you have something in your hands. Now, whether that something becomes big or not truly depends on your execution capabilities. But yeah.
Perfect. And with this, as you said, when you do a product market fit, when you get out there, when you understand that you have repeat users, today we see that a lot of startups go out and burn a lot of their funds that they raise on marketing to acquire that set of users in the early stages. Do you think that's the right way for startups to go and acquire by burning funds, or is a systematic growth, hyperlocal growth path also a manner that should be chosen, or like a planned growth path to be chosen?
It again, right? Like it's a question that truly depends on the macroeconomic factors also, right? If my mathematics of the business tell me very clearly, right, that I can go aggressive and in the next 1 year or in some amount of time, 6 months, 9 months, 1 year, right, I will recoup that money and I will build a sustainable business, then not going fast would just mean losing the battle, right?
Correct.
So if I know something is going to work and I have mathematical proof of that working, then there should be nothing that should stop me from moving aggressively, right? Sustainably growing a business is a great practice, but may not always work in a consumer internet marketplace business, right? Or when there is a lot of competitive force around you, right? If there is no competition, if you're a monopoly, if it's not a consumer marketplace business, right, then sure, you can grow sustainably, in fact, grow profitably, right? But it depends on the choice of sector that you picked, right? That sort of gives the answer to this. It's no one size fit all answer.
Answer there. Amazing. Okay. And now, when we talk about, say, fundraisers, when a firm raises funds, there are a lot of congratulations around. There's a lot being spoken. But what is it on the back that is not being spoken about? Because it comes with great responsibility when funds come to a firm. So, what is that thinking, or what is it that the core team has to go through when the funds have come, of what they plan further?
See, essentially, what is funding, right? Funding is uh, is someone investing in you with the hope of better returns in the future, right? So funding is a responsibility. It is something that someone has placed trust in you. They've taken a certain amount of risk, and against that, they obviously expect you to do better than what you're doing and thereby get them returns, right? As with anything, why do we invest in mutual funds? Why do we invest in anything, right?
Okay.
Gold, mutual funds, whatever, right? Because we expect returns. Um, but at the same time, funding is also a testimony of the fact that there is something that's going right, right? And therefore, people are willing to bet on you, right? So the feeling is usually twofold, that hey, there is certainly something that we're doing right. Everyone around us also sees a high opportunity in the sector, in the space, no matter what one is doing, with whichever sector it be. And then it is also a responsibility to do even better, to do more, right? And that's what generally a team goes through, right? It's a momentary satisfaction, and then also a realization that we have to do even better. We have to take the ceiling even higher, right? And just be the best at everything that we do.
Lovely. And great. So now from a founder's mindset, if I had to ask you that whether when it comes to raising funds, does it make sense to, dilute your equity in the early days, or should you go for debt?
I think it's again a question, right? Like if I just place myself outside of Snabbit, right, outside of wherever I'm working, in general, everything that I've learned in the last few years, right, there are certain scenarios where equity makes sense, and then there are certain businesses where debt may make sense, right? If I'm building a manufacturing business, let's say, right, which has a very clear demand, very clear supply, comparatively lesser uncertainty, um, why should I dilute my equity, right? Like I can just take some loans, I can just take some debt, I can invest that money, and I know that within 2 3 years I'll be able to break even, and whatever, I'll be able to repay my entire debt and eventually make money while owning 100% of my company. If your sector and your business allows you to do that, that is absolutely the best thing to do, right? And if it doesn't, that is when you go down this route, right? For example, most of the consumer internet businesses, right, um, they are generally high risk, and also debt has a ceiling, right? Like you cannot go like extremely high on debt, um, and that's why people go for equity also.
Perfect. So that explains the ratio choice that one can make here. And now, if one, from your perspective as an individual, not any company, not any founder, but what are the kind of money mistakes that founders keep repeating again and again, generally with fundraisers, or generally with the flow of cash that they get to run the business?
I think again, a question that is very individual to a personality of every founder, right? Uh, just as is with each of us, right? If today I I handed a couple of crores of bank balance to a few of you, right? We all would behave very differently, right? In terms of our usage of the money, right? Some may invest it, some will spend it, right? And some may just keep it in bank with 4% interest rate, right? So uh, that is how also founders generally behave, right? Some will invest it very well, some will be very frugal, some will maybe lose control over frugality, right? So that's generally how this thing also happens. At the end of the day, these are also just individuals, right? Everyone is just a human, right? And everyone makes human errors.
Correct. Awesome. Uh, just now moving on, I think that's about this segment. Moving on towards the industry right now. That, as you also mentioned previously, that we are in that zone of 10-minute deliveries, 10-minute services, everything happening instantly. How, what would be your perspective on the future of the 10-minute business?
Um, See, I think 10 minutes is very high. 10 minutes or 15 minutes, 20, 30, whatever, right? Like a certain time period of minutes, right? Uh, is very convenient, right? And as humans, if you can get something that's convenient by not paying comparatively higher amount, right? Why wouldn't you want that, right? If I ask you, if you get an iPhone 16 at 50K, right? And if you can get an iPhone 16 or 17 at 52K, would you not want iPhone 17, right? Like you would, right? uh, it's the same analogy that sort of goes into this kind of business, right? If I can get something quickly, um, why shouldn't I do it? Unless there is merit in me not getting it quickly, which in most of these cases there is none, right? Um, so I see the future of quick services, quick anything, right? Quick delivery, quick services, quick anything that we do. And if it makes sense, honestly, it has to make sense also, right? Like, um, I see it as something that will do well. And India's infrastructure also allows support for this, right? And yeah, added convenience is nothing wrong, right? We often demonize more convenience and things like that, but there is no harm, right? Like if it is actually doing no harm, there is no harm. You
Correct.
save time, you can use that time to do better things.
But then, what's the cost that this comes at? Like, is this sustainable? Because there's a lot of burnout happening because of this 10-minute culture.
To be honest, um, there is. I think it's very sustainable, right? It is largely sustainable, and a lot of companies follow very sustainable practices and really care about the workforce, right? I largely don't see anything. It in fact provides so much employment to a lot of India, right, and gives them more dignity, better quality of life that they can, and more money which they can use to support their family. How can that be wrong, right?
Got it. So, okay, again, just to change this a little perspective on this is on human burnout also when I say is when the core teams, because the functionality of this is a very human, it is a tech led thing, but at the same time it is a very human thing. You often hear founders say, you know, for this festive season we've created a war room inside our office. Or for example, Dipinder Goyal mentioned that they used to have a war room during 31st for their Zomato orders or any New Year party or so. So the kind of involvement people have and the kind of burnout they go through there, is that something that's sustainable for individuals? Because that means people will start retiring early, or hopefully they will not be able to sustain it as a long term work till the last day kind of a attitude.
Honestly, that's not how it works, right? Any big business that you see, right, will have times in a year when they will go through high demand, right? When there is high demand, that is the time when you step up and cater to the high demand. Because if you don't do that, the business anyway will not flourish, right? Um, and it's pretty much just that, right? Like it does not lead to burnout. I think no matter what business it is, right? Think of IPL, right? um, Sportsmen, right? Like during IPL they are playing a cricket game every other day, right? The whole backend infrastructure is active throughout those 2 months, right? Doesn't mean that those people will retire early or they are extremely burnt out, right? Like uh, it is something that is required to support the business,
Correct.
right? And to do great work. I mean, it is usually these periods that allow people to do great work, right? And figure out things that were earlier not figured out.
Correct.
And it's just that.
Awesome. So it is that people will live. We can be rest assured. Now, in this case, also, you know, today the culture is changing. Where with a lot of startups, with a lot of you know, these fast-moving cultural organizations that are building up, there are things like some people traditionally wanted titles in their career more than growth. Today, titles don't matter. It's a flat organization where you go. So, how do you see this culture changing for the future youth who enter the industry?
I think it's the classic debate between designation and ownership, right? Um, Designation is just something that you have on a piece of paper, right? Right. But at the end of the day, it is entirely ownership that really matters, right? So for anyone new who's entering the workforce or who wants to grow really big, right, you need to be a complete owner. Ownership is all about what you're not willing to let fail, right? If you own something, you will not let it fail, right? And for that, you will do everything that is required. And the mindset that usually does well in any organization, regardless of the scale, is ownership. And so one should always have that
That,
ownership mindset.
that's the mindset that people need to have and wear the cap always. Great. And there's a big debate in the industry today that skills over degrees. This is going back to our initial conversation when we spoke about your ISB days also. So when it comes to skills over degrees, we do see that the government is also trying to do different initiatives to improve skilling, improve things in the country. How or what should a today's youth focus on to be able to build a long lasting career? Because sometimes probably it's a short stint with a startup where skills might work, but eventually you might need a degree, or how that balance can be found.
If you're very good at your skills, right? Skills, ultimately, skills are the most important thing. Right? Skills are what allow us to actually deliver a meaningful output, right? So there is no debate to the fact that skills are the most important things that you will need, and you need to you need to continuously keep evolving your skills, right? Continuously keep adjusting as per the way the world is moving. Um, where degrees matter is that it's like a certificate of a skill, right? Just think of it that way, right? There may be a plumber who is a very good plumber, right? And then there may be a plumber who is certified by a certain association that this guy knows it, right? It's similar to having gold, right? Gold with a hallmark and gold without a hallmark, right? If there is a certification that can attest to the fact that one has the skill and has cleared a certain threshold of um, certain test, right? Has a certain skill level. That obviously is helpful, right? Because it allows easier discovery. It allows one to place more trust in the other individual, and so it has to be the right mix of both, right? Yeah.
But skills first, you would say.
Skills is the first thing.
Skills
If
first.
you don't have if you don't have the skills anyway, you'll not get a certification.
Correct. And when it comes to businesses, is it validation or value creation?
Businesses are always about value creation. There is, in fact, everything in life is always about value creation, right? If you create value, people will keep coming back to you. If you don't create value, nobody's going to come to you.
Correct. So today when we talk about again value creation, all of this, when it comes from a relationship with a investor in the organization, it is being heard or it is being said that every investor, because even as you said earlier, they come or become a part of the business as a business transaction. They are coming to or investing in you because they expect a return out of you. So these days the startups have a hurry to reach an IPO level because that probably gives the ROI faster to the investors. So is that decision generally an investor-led decision, or is that a founding team-led decision that we go to IPO so we can create exponential value quickly?
Honestly, this is something that's outside of my purview also, right? This is
Got it.
somewhere where I have not reached yet to be
Right.
able to come.
My question wasn't about Snabbit though.
No,
It's
no,
general.
no. In general, also, I will say, right? Like, I have not been a part of these conversations to know what really is the
Pushes.
thought process, right? But as for traditional um, companies, I believe the decision to go for an IPO usually comes from the fact that, you know, sometimes you want to raise more money to be able to grow business farther, right? And that's when you go for an IPO, right? But this is for like businesses in the, like, I'm not talking about startups. I'm talking about like businesses, right? But yeah.
Correct. Okay. Interesting. Okay. I just want to put this like a few questions up front about a few companies. I would say you can choose very easily not to answer them if you wish to. But what would you think is the future of this brand based on the pace that they're growing today? Is the kind of question.
What do you
What is
think?
the future of the brand? Do you think it'll grow faster, it'll become bigger, eventually it might crash because the way they're growing, or they'll be merged with someone else in future. They'll grow with someone else possibly,
Right.
right?
Right.
I would want to start with something which is obvious in the industry, that I'll say Zepto. Everyone knows that's the talk of the town.
I think Zepto um, is doing well, right? They're solving a good pain point, right? And I think it'll do well.
It'll do well.
Yeah.
All right, great. Zomato.
Zomato is already doing well, right? I think
But there's
I
so
think you
many
mean
changes,
Eternal, right?
right? Eternal. No, not Eternal. Zomato.
Zomato.
Because Blinkit is taking over Zomato. That's why I asked you Zomato.
See, that's fine, right? You can have another arm of business within the larger conglomerate, which is doing better,
Correct.
as how it should always be, right? If that does not happen, then you're not making the right future decisions, right? But I think Zomato, obviously, if you think of China, China does almost 10x the number of food deliveries a day than what India does, right?
Correct.
So I don't think we've reached a ceiling anywhere. This will 100% become a really big business, is my belief.
That's the belief. Great. Snabbit.
Snabbit, I think, will be one of the biggest consumer internet companies in India to come. Right, like it is. I have 100% belief in the fact that it will do really well.
And we wish we are partners helping you reach there. Right. All right. So now coming to just, probably towards more of the human element, more of the human side. We're coming towards the end of the discussion here as well. What is that one thing that you go to on a stressful day that helps you relax? Or keeps you sane? Yes, we have an audience of youth, so
I would say, apart from going to my family, right, which obviously keeps me a lot more sane and to the ground, right, keeps me more grounded. I think in terms of anything outside of my family, I just go to YouTube, to be honest, right? Like I spend some 30 minutes on YouTube whenever I'm too stressed, or I'll go on a walk. I think actually not even YouTube, it is actually taking a good 20-30 minutes walk, right, in a good vicinity, right, listening to music, which usually brings down my stress levels a lot, gives me a lot more clarity. So whenever I have this thing, right, whenever I'm caught between two decisions, very confused about something, I just go on a walk. I just go on a walk and I keep thinking while I'm walking, and then suddenly have some clarity. Right. So
awesome. And one belief you changed in yourself or your thinking with time as you grew with startups or with businesses?
see, one thing that's clearly changed, and I think the most important thing that I have realized is that when there is a will, there is a way, right? If you want to make something happen, no matter whether you are an expert in that field, whether you already know something, you don't know something, there's someone to help, there's not someone to help. If you really want to do something, um, you can figure it out, right? And over time, what I've realized is the very thing, right? No matter what the problem is, there is always a way, and I will figure it out, right? At least I go with that mindset.
Awesome. And one thing you wish more people knew? It could be something dumb as well.
I would wish everyone to just know what they want in life, right? Like you have to make your own decision on what you eventually want to do in life. Like if you want to be great at sports, don't spend too much time working, right? Like then spend time on sports, right? If you want to be great at work, then spend a lot of time at work, right? If you want a great balance in life, then have the right balance, right? But whatever you do, right, your actions need to be in the right vector, in the right direction, right? Because otherwise you will end up going a lot of distance but no displacement, right? Like you will travel around the world and be back where you started, right? So it is very important to know what you want in life, and then deliberately act to achieve what you want in life. Yeah, that would be.
Awesome. And I think I just have last 2 to 3 questions, which is your opinions probably. These are very open-ended. I leave it on to you that uh, today adoption of AI at work, and I wouldn't want you to answer in a way where AI is going to take jobs or nahi. That's not the question. We all know the answer to it with ChatGPT on all our phones today. But the fact being that how extensively do you think that AI adoption, where it is spreading, will it come down or narrow down to certain tasks, or will it exponentially grow to even more uh, elements of work in a day-to-day life?
It will. I think AI will have inputs in everything that we do, right? To some degree, right? I think AI is just going to be like your phone or your internet, right? Where you can do a lot of things when you have internet access. Similarly, AI is going to help everyone take more informed, more productive decisions, no matter what the area of decision making they want in life, right? That's what AI, in my opinion, will be. Again, I'm no expert, but at the end of the day, right, you can have all the tools in the world. What matters is how you use them, right? So, right usage of AI will be the key by people.
Perfect. And now, if I had to ask you one question, was Mumbai traffic versus Bangalore traffic?
Uh, to be
Because you
honest,
moved
right?
from Powai to Koramangala.
To be very honest, right? I used to think Bangalore traffic was like something insane, and you would lose that you would lose your mind over there. But after moving to Bangalore, I've realized that's not the case. I think broadly, the traffic is almost the same between Mumbai and Bangalore. It is not very different.
It's very true that. All right. So, last from my side before we open up for the audience is uh, because you're on a core team of an extremely fast growing brand today, what is your expectation from a candidate when you hire them? What do you look at a candidate when you want to bring them on board or your team?
When I hire a candidate, I look at the intent, right? Why do they want to be here, right? What is the core belief that this stems from, and what is the motive, right, behind joining the team? And second, what I look at is ability to hustle, right? So one is to have the right intent, and second is the ability to work hard, right? With baseline smartness. I'm not looking for Einsteins, right? I'm looking for people who have baseline smartness, but great intent, high ownership, and ability to work hard, right? Like these are my core things when I look for people.
So, great. I'd just like to open the question. Any questions from the audience we would want to?
Yeah, Jay, I have two questions. One in a lighter note. You know, you know, I always hear from my wife that she's finding it difficult to manage one maid at home. How do you manage like this many maids in the
You know, we that's why we're here, right? What we do is difficult, but through right processes and right systems, you can manage people.
Do you find operational maids going to it because you are finding it you are solving very big difficult in a situation where somebody is going to somebody's house. Have you faced with any challenges like which you can share?
See, I think by and large, right, there are generally, by and large, no problems. Because it's not like the maid industry used to not exist before or after any of the quick services platforms came, right? So the behavior is almost at a similar. But what changes is that a lot of house helps now have a lot more dignity. They have a brand name to attach to, right? And they feel a lot more confident in themselves, right? Which was never the case in the history. the one of the most marginalized sections, right? And now they're having their time where they are feeling more dignified, feeling more confident, feeling better. They have a community to share their time with. So it's largely very positive.
Right. So the second one, still, we are doing a lot of good consumer tech, consumer faced industries in India, but still India lacks global, solutions which is globally, interesting or recognized. Do you think one of these startups is going to go global?
See, I'm 100% sure that many of our Indian startups will go global, right? There is always a life cycle of how the whole startup industry evolves in any country, right? First, you start with solving your internal problems, right? And then eventually you start solving the world's problems, right? Um, and that's what even we will do. The kind of infrastructure that is getting built in India within each of these big companies, any big company that you can name off, right? uh, they have extremely high talent density, a lot of hunger among the people, right? And a lot of resources to solve a lot bigger problems, right? So I wouldn't be surprised if any of our current Indian startups go on to become very big names globally also. um, in fact, I'm certain it will happen.
All right. I think thanks for your time, Jay. It's a
Absolutely.
pleasure having you. It's a pleasure working with Snabbit. It's a pleasure associating with you all, and hope and wish we can grow much bigger together.
No, no, absolutely. It's been a pleasure working with you guys as well. And yeah,
Great.
thank you for having me.
Thank you. Thank you so much.